America's Mayor live from New Hampshire. It's not flooding here, but it is flooding, I guess, down in the Southwest, isn't it? You saw at the conclusion of our show last night, if you were watching, our surprise at seeing the additional flood in New Mexico, which turns out, thank goodness, to not be anywhere near as long or as broad or as devastating in its results. But in the magnitude of the short duration of it, it looked just as bad, particularly when it almost took down the building and drove a house through the middle of the town. So we'll get to that, but let's catch up on the one that was the much bigger catastrophe, unfortunately, and that's that now is at 119 dead, 173 missing, and those are very relative numbers all the time. I don't know. I don't like giving out those numbers. Never liked it on September 11. I guess you have to know it because it does give you, of course you have to know it. I mean, historically, and to measure the impact of it and to give an idea of what's going to be necessary to rebuild and the resources you're going to need. But when you say 193 people dead, and we just think of those children from that classroom, the Bugle classroom, 8 years old and 9 years old. I mean, I don't know how you multiply out the number of people devastated by this. The fathers, the mothers, the children, the grandfathers, the grandmothers, the brothers and sisters, the friends, the cousins, the co-workers, the future contributions of these people. And the whole area of the wonderful historic area of Texas and what it does to its psyche and its future. And, you know, it is worthwhile, if it can be done in the right spirit, to very, very professionally and very intensely review what was done to learn from it. I would think this is not one where you're going to achieve very much by casting blame. It's not a war where somebody causes it, or seems to at least. This is an act of nature or an act of God, and nobody provoked it. Were there things that could have been done that would have mitigated the damage? There always are. And then there's always a very difficult question: would it have worked? So we'll go over that. We covered that on the earlier show. I never know how many watch that and how many watch this, but we'll save that for a little bit later, in case you're just listening in from the earlier show. We were dealing with the difficulty of peace in the Middle East because there are choices that have to be made which negate each other. What I mean is, you can't have, according to Netanyahu and the Israelis, they do not want Hamas in any way represented in Gaza because Hamas is committed to their destruction. Hamas, of course, refuses to settle unless they have a place in Gaza. Both positions, I mean, I know which one is the right one morally, but both positions make sense. Why would Gaza exterminate itself? And why would Israel accept it? So I'm very interested in seeing how they come up. Because one of these articles said the easier one is going to be Gaza. Well, somebody's got to back down. The Israelis have to say, we'll take a little Hamas, maybe cover them over with Egyptians and Jordanians and other Palestinians, but we'll take a little of Hamas. Or Hamas has to be self-sacrificing and say, we'll get out and we'll try to practice being somebody else and coming back to fight another day. Kind of like the FARC did in Colombia. It's another story that I was deeply involved in, and it's a tragedy what happened with that. And we'll explain that at some point, because at some point that's going to bite us. So I'm very interested to see. I'm very interested to see where the concession gets made. Who makes it? Or do they both make it and agree on a compromise? Now, Iran and America and Israel, same thing. I mean, it's a straight out. I mean, Biden had confused this thing to a fairly well, but Trump has made it very easy. It's no nuclear material. You can't be within 1,000 miles of nuclear material, you crazy, insane, religious maniac, nut, killer, homicidal idiot who wanted to kill me. It's kind of personal. When I say me, I'm talking about Trump in general, and I'm talking about me. He tried to kill me twice. He's got several of his people in jail for doing it. It isn't reported here because the American press doesn't give a damn if they kill me. The fewer Trump people, the better. As several doctors and people in Texas said about those poor kids that died. Well, I don't feel bad for the MAGA ones. If you haven't noticed, there's a sickness going on in this country, and to minimize it is a terrible mistake. To think this is life as usual in a civilized country is to make a terrible mistake. This is a country that has, however you want to define it, very practically or in some kind of spiritual way, this is a country where evil is abroad in the land. Evil thoughts, evil ideas, evil inclinations, and it goes right from the bottom to the very top. When somebody like Schumer can stand up and say, to go harass Justice Gorsuch's house, and then within days somebody goes there to kill him, and nobody does anything to Schumer. There's something very, very sick going on. So we have to be very, very careful. But let's hope that they can get there. Let's hope that they can get there, because I don't know if we can solve all of these wars, but getting a few of them under control would start to make the world function a lot calmer. So now let's move over to the other part of the world. Now that we didn't figure out the Middle East, right? And that's Russia and Ukraine. The president is, without any doubt, fed up with Putin. The whatever strategy he had for Putin, I can assure you, has changed. Probably changed about a week or two ago. He's now expressing it very, very clearly. If you haven't noticed, Trump is very transparent and very open about where he's going. So you get a chance to make an adjustment before he gets there. Now, in the trade area, some countries have really benefited themselves that way. Vietnam made a brilliant decision. He just imposed all kinds of tariffs on all those South Asian countries, 35%, 40%, 45%. They're all going to go down eventually. Vietnam is going to, I think, it'd be at 10%. Much lower than China. Now, you have to know, because he knows, and the press doesn't know, but he knows. And of course, we had a whole war not knowing this. Vietnam hates China. Oh, not for a year. Not for 2 years. Not for a century. But for centuries. Almost as bad as Japan and China, which is, I don't know, it's part of the ethnic background. I mean, it's simple to describe. The little country of Japan, every time it goes to war with the big country of China, humiliates them, beats them, and destroys them. And the only time China is able to take advantage of them is when Japan is being peaceful. So after World War II, Japan became a pacifist country, like Germany. No, they weren't going to have an army anymore. They weren't going to have arms. It was beautiful for Mao Zedong. He got rid of his biggest psychological worry. Not the United States, not Russia, not Mongolia, not Korea, which he was always able to push around, but Japan. If you haven't noticed, Japan is rearming. Japan is part of all of the exercises we do now, including one coming up in a day or two with the Philippines and Taiwan, which is going to be double the size of any we've ever done in the past. And Taiwan has just displayed HIMARS missiles, which are first-generation missiles that could do a tremendous job negating any kind of amphibious landing. Gee, I wonder who they think might amphibiously land. Were they going to do a reenactment of The Longest Day? But the missiles are, you never know, supposedly very, very hard to detect. They fly very, very low, and they are extraordinarily fast. And they reach mainland China from Taiwan, and they certainly reach the beach. And then there are other arms that they are incorporating in the drill, which will be 2 weeks longer than usual, which China is squawking about like crazy, which is good. We have to have them prepared. But during all this, Trump's got to find a way to push Putin into negotiating a reasonable deal with Ukraine. And
if you're going to fight, and they were maybe at a nuclear stage. They're both, nuclear powers. And I think stopping that was very important. We're trying to help out with a Biden-created monster, this whole thing that's happening with Russia and Ukraine. It's a horrible thing, and I'm not happy with President Putin at all. But this is something that would have never happened if I were president. This was a war that was never going to happen. Go ahead, Brian. I was with you at all if you're going to fight, and they were maybe at a nuclear.
In one of those, he used the word bullshit. He calls me up and all he does is give me bullshit. Now, he doesn't really talk that way about serious subjects like that. I know him. I told you, I predicted when he was going to attack, right? The morning, I saw his face in the morning.
The war that should have never happened.
This guy is very upset.
And it should end, and I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to move
I'm looking at it, yeah. No, I'm looking. The senators.
Did you get the question, Ted? I couldn't get that question.
It went right into his answer,
It might
but
have been a different subject.
it was on peace talks, right? And how frustrated the president is. And then the follow-up question had to do with Lindsey Graham and additional sanctions on Russia. And he said we're looking at it.
Lindsey Graham has a bipartisan piece of legislation that has the support of 83 senators. And I think this is really good work. This is a very intricate piece of legislation that would come really close to bankrupting Russia. It would do an effective job of cutting off. Let's call it it's a secondary sanctions. So when you sanction Russia, you say nobody is going to buy oil from Russia, and anybody who buys oil from Russia, we're going to take out of the international banking system. We're not going to do business with. You're really making it impossible for them. And it works. I mean, it has crushed Iran, and it's hurt Russia a lot, and China has bailed them out. China is buying now triple the amount of its oil from Russia, and I don't know if they're still paying them a premium, because the all you can get from China, of course, please don't regard any of this as fact, but all you can get from China is gossip and intelligence. But I think it's pretty solid that China is tired of throwing money at Russia in a stalemate in Ukraine, and also becoming more unpopular internationally. I mean, China is a strange country. They begin by wanting to win friends and influence people. I mean, they go into a country like those African countries there. I know some of those guys because they complained to me 4 years ago. They go into those African countries, and he has the Belt and Road program. It sounds great, right? We're going to come. We're going to build railroads for you. We're going to build trains for them. We're going to build airlines and airports. Oh gosh, we're going to make Uganda look great. And then everybody signs up, and they all love each other. And then and they do it. They do it with debt. So now Uganda owes China lots of money, and China keeps piling it on and doesn't bother to collect it for a while. There's pure mafia stuff. And the interest builds up. And whatever poor Uganda borrowed is now, they got to pay back twice in about 4 years. They make the loan sharks that used to hang around Madison Square Garden look calm and nice. And then they walk in and say, oh, gee, we own half the railroad. And the Uganda president said, I never agreed to have you own. By the time they're finished, they own half of Uganda. I'm just picking Uganda. It's not necessarily Uganda. It's about 12 of these countries. And it tends to be the small ones that they can take advantage of. Well, way back in 2019, the African presidents, and I met with a group of them, were telling me how upset they were about this, how they wanted, how Trump has helped them work their way out of some of these. And then they went on to tell me what a shithead Obama was. They said, well, you'd imagine the guy comes from Africa and he never would meet with us. He was embarrassed of us. And we tried to use that in the election, that the African presidents prefer, and the African presidents cooperated with us. Did you ever see an African president say anything nice about Obama? I never did. That's weird. That's weird. He had the ambassador from Ukraine endorse him and endorse Hillary and endorse Biden. You don't know that, right? Ukraine interfered in our election and supported them. I mean, he had all kinds of people endorsing him, but he couldn't get them. I mean, and because China knows what America avoids. Everybody knows that China owns Biden. So you might as well not try to have Biden help you with China, because he's going to help. I mean, nobody's paid Biden more money than China. No one in his own country, the United States, ever paid him that much. That's a lot of money to a crook like Biden. So now it looks like, and boy, this is a feeling that if I were in the government, I would have them do a special study on this to make sure I was right. But I have a feeling that China and Russia are separating. And it's China. China doesn't like losers. They're not going to be the predominant country in the world in 2049 sticking with Russia, which means Russia is now going to have to go off on its own. And I think Trump, quite logically, was banking on the fact that Putin might want a lifeline. He doesn't seem to see it that way. He seems to think he can just keep banging away at Ukraine with small gains, put himself in the position of having the most territory possible, and then making a deal that is a complete 100% victory for him. With, as I said, there are two sides to Hamas and Israel, two sides to the U.S. and Iran. There's one side to this. Putin has no Putin wants complete and unconditional victory. He wants all the land that he has. He has actually put in a request for more because 3 of those provinces, he doesn't have the whole thing. That may be just an add-on. He's gained a little bit more territory in the delay, not much. He wants Ukraine to not have any peacekeeping force there. In other words, no American troops, no EU troops, no NATO troops. He wants a very small, controlled Ukrainian army. He wants Ukraine to agree never to join NATO, so they'll never be defended. One could say he's setting them up to take them over as soon as Trump leaves, if Trump agrees to it. So I don't know how you reach that agreement, and I don't know how he thinks we are, except he may think that Trump is weaker than he originally thought. Now it's the president's job to show him, like he showed the Ayatollah, cut it out. And I think short of, well, there are 2 things. One, he should sign this bill. It'll knock Putin back to that little room he was in during the pandemic. And then second, he should do what he started to do yesterday, and that is give him arms. And I don't know if I'd limit it to defensive arms. The big thing that he wants, he has. He just has to be able to use them. He wants to be able to use our jets to go further into Russia, to bomb Russian cities the way they're bombing Ukrainian cities. I mean, Putin will yell and scream like crazy, but how in the name of God can he complain if they go bomb Moscow when he's bombing Kyiv? He's dropping bombs on the civilian population of the capital of Ukraine. What the heck makes Moscow so sacrosanct? As Trump once said to Ted and I, you know, those nice bubbles they have over Moscow look really pretty, not if they get blown up.
Well, you know, the news just reported on that today. They're reporting it as a news story.
That Trump said that?
Saying that, he told it to us, but he must have said it a few other times.
Well,
because
we've used it before.
Yeah. And well, you've been reporting on it. Well, he did do it with us, but he's apparently did it a few other times because the news is just out today that Trump said in 2014, Trump threatened to bomb Moscow. This is CNN.
Follow him.
CNN report today. Trump said he threatened to bomb Moscow if Putin attacked Ukraine. 2024 fundraiser tapes reveal. We might have been at that fundraiser. So CNN, this is just today. Donald Trump told a private gathering of donors.
No doubt about it. He told them directly.
Last
year.
If
you think of taking an inch.
Yeah. Well, this is.
He said, I really like Moscow. I like it. It has all those. And he kind of made fun of it a little. He said, "Oh, like he means the domes, all those bubbles,
the candy the candy canes."
He said, "It look terrible with all those bubbles."
They look a little funny.
But if I have to do it,
they look funny. Mayor, this is how the president recounts, and this is about how he said it to us. Quote, with Putin, I said, if you go into Ukraine, I'm going to bomb the shit out of Moscow. I'm telling you, I have no choice, Trump said during one 2024 fundraiser, according to the audio. And then Putin goes like, I don't believe you, but he believed me 10%. That's exactly what we've been saying for years, right? Even if he believed just 5%.
He told we can.
That's exactly how he told us.
We can now say that what he told us privately is confirmed.
And the exact 10%. That's the number he used for us.
And
genius, right? When it comes to international relations.
And I remember the times he did it, because he would.
And that's how these guys. That's what gets to them, right?
The message that I would give Putin. Not that I want to communicate with Putin. I have a very different view of Putin than
who you've met numerous times.
You know what I think of Putin, but
right.
I thought from the first time I met him that he was a stone cold killer. He reminded me of the people that used to rat for me. The mafia hitman who used to rat for me. He had that dead look in his eyes.
They had the same deal with KGB.
Pretend to be anything.
Right.
And he didn't seem to have the first time I met him, he came to ground zero, and he didn't seem, he was very much on our side at that point, because he was very and he is very anti-Islam, except when he makes deals with Iran. Meanwhile, he'll go down into southern Russia and kill all the Muslims he can. He doesn't trust them as wanting to be part of a Russian empire. And I guess if he could have his way, he'd eliminate them all. But he'll also do business with them. But I think Putin, despite the fact that he may be, in some ways, people may regard him as pure evil doesn't mean irrational. Well, you can be evil and irrational, which I would attribute to the Ayatollah and his insane religious nuts. But you can be extremely rational and very evil. And I think both Xi Jinping, and Putin fit that category, which means that they are candidates for negotiation. It's not foolhardy to negotiate with them. I believe it's foolhardy to negotiate with the Islamic Republic of Iran. How many times can you make a fool out of me? 10. But what he needs is to have these secondary sanctions, in which case we will pounce on any country that we find is kind of white labeling Russian oil, basically taking the Russian oil and trying to sell it as their own. And it's very risky to have that happen to you because you get cut off. And given where we are now as an oil producer, we can just move into that market if we have to. It'll be very quickly. We have a surplus of oil, and we have a big surplus of natural gas. And now that we've got Saudi Arabia kind of back in, we can do almost anything we want with Russian oil. So I think Lindsey Graham's bill, which has 83 members, I think it sails through the House, again, by a similar margin. And then you have a United States, which almost seems impossible to do now, stepping forward against Mr. Putin. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Mr. Putin is not the tough guy that he appears to be. He spent most of his time with COVID. I think he was hiding under a bed with whatever girl they could find for him. So maybe we can send him back to that bed. But he's not going to be in office long if the people of Russia can't buy food again. Remember the last time that happened, the Soviet Union went down. So maybe now the Putin empire goes. But that has to be our aim, and he has to start thinking that. And we have to go in with a much more of a demand than we do now. I have said from the beginning, we have to ask and demand that he give back half the land, a little over half the land, and then we'll settle for half. He can't go into this like, it's all win for me. So let's see if that doesn't happen. I think it might. I almost fell out of my chair today when I read someone for a Murdoch publication saying that President Trump is right about the Fed. It was Alan Reichshafen, who is a senior lecturer on capital markets at NYU. And basically what he's saying is that the Fed has gone way beyond its mandate, has become a political institution. And the president's saying, well, then I should be able to remove these people and put my own people in. Because if it is going to be political, it should be the politics America voted for, not the old politics. And the recommendation is that now that we're getting down to Powell will be a creature of history, which most people, I think, now agree is a way above his head and a fool. I think Trump has a real chance to reorganize the Fed. This idea of complete independence from politics sounds great, But that means complete independence from our Treasury Department. Now, our Treasury Department isn't just a Treasury Department, whether you like it or not, or you want to call it politics. It sets the economic policy of the United States. And then the Fed goes in another direction. It's like it's another country. It should be a coordinated policy. And the professor has some suggestions on how you can overlap the Fed, retain some of its independence, but at the same time, make sure that we have a mechanism to negotiate and work out a single policy. And he wants to build it around the president's working group on financial markets. That right now includes the Treasury, the Fed, and the other economic agencies. And because he said you've got monetary policy being made by the Fed, and economic policy being made by the Treasury Department that's inconsistent with the Fed. And right now we're growing, but the professor agrees that if the Fed were on board, we would be soaring. Well, you see the jerk there. He'll be gone soon, and he can go spend time with his friend Biden, for whom he cut interest rates. I think there was a point at which, there was no interest rates. I remember going to buy a car, and I said, I'll pay you cash. Do I get a discount? They said, why should we give you a discount? We'd loan you the money without any interest. I said, I don't understand that, loaning money without interest. That's the product of this jackass that put us into inflation. And now he won't lower interest rates when we have inflation under control, and it would help to ease things, particularly the psychological issue about whether all this is going to work. This isn't going to matter in a year. And he's not going to matter real soon. The Supreme Court has approved federal firings. None other than Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote the order. Yeah, basically the order was the Constitution says the president is in charge of the executive branch of government. Judge, get the hell out of it. You don't get to decide if he made the right decision or the wrong decision in firing a federal employee. You were not appointed a United States district judge to oversee the hiring in the federal government. That's a different branch of government. I must say, this is refreshing to see that Sonia Sotomayor was the one to write that. It really shows a recalibration of the country back to our time-honored constitutional principles that almost seem absurd when these judges enter national orders. And they're a judge for, the District of Idaho. But they issue an order that will bind you in New York. They don't have the jurisdiction to do that. They haven't been elected to national office. They've been put in to be a judge and to interpret, not make the law, in one district involving the people in front of them. Congress makes general policy, not the Supreme Court. The president agrees or disagrees with it. Another guy who doesn't seem to understand the government we have, and I don't know this guy, except I know it's a phony position. He's the Miami-Dade mayor. And he's a Democrat, of course, otherwise he wouldn't be doing something stupid. And he wants to get to go look at Alligator Alcatraz because he wants to inspect it. The mayor wants to inspect the federal facility. Now, he's not a mayor. He's a county executive of Dade County. Miami has a mayor. But the guy who was the county executive of Dade County wasn't getting as much publicity as the mayor. And I know this to be true because some governors in New York get annoyed that the mayor of New York gets more publicity. So maybe someday they want to be known as mayor of New York also. I don't know. But he created people don't know who or what he is. He's the county executive that oversees the city of Miami, the city of Miami Beach, the city of Pompano, the city of Boopadooper. The mayor of Miami is a Republican. He's a Democrat, so you know he's a jackass. And what does he want to do? He wants to inspect a federal detention facility. Now, I will tell you, when I was mayor of New York, I never asked to inspect federal facilities. And I think either President Clinton or President Bush would have told me to go to hell. And when I was U.S. attorney, if a mayor like Koch tried to inspect our facilities, I'd arrested him. The city government and the county government have no oversight responsibility over the United States of America. They're inferior to the United States of America. Their opinion on what a federal prison is like is worth nothing. And we know it's going to be political. We want to have it evaluated. Let's get an independent professional group to do it, not some kind of a hack politician from a corrupt political party like the Miami Democratic Party. I mean, these guys were stealing elections until DeSantis came along like it was, yeah. But I mean, that's totally ridiculous. They want to inspect alligator Alcatraz. But it's all to play up to the illegals. And they must be doing it because in some way they have them voting. They wouldn't play up to them so much if they didn't have them voting. I'm sure they've got these people voting. But they got to be careful. I mean, they thought they were going to turn the state a few years ago when all the people after the storm left Puerto Rico. And they thought the Puerto Ricans who came to Florida were going to vote like the Puerto Ricans in New York and vote all Democrat. I was worried about that because I got to 50% with the Hispanic vote, and I largely did it with the other Hispanic groups and the growth of the Dominican community. Because traditionally, Hispanics from Puerto Rico join up with the Democrat Party. Hispanics from the other parts of South America, and obviously from Spain, tend to come from very often much more traditional backgrounds, and including the Dominicans, who are basically like to be in their own business. And they tend to move toward Republican if they're given the opportunity. And now we're getting close to 50-50. But this guy is playing and by the way, Hispanics, legal Hispanics, are in favor of expelling the illegals. Of course they would be. Because, by the way, this group is a particularly dangerous group. It's a disproportionately dangerous group compared to prior groups of illegals, because it came in under conditions that would attract criminals. It would attract terrorists. It would attract drug dealers. It would attract human traffickers. It would attract spies, because you were offered going in no scrutiny. In the past, if you wanted to come in, you had to go through a gauntlet and take a risk. Well, that'll hold you back a little. When you have whatever you want to call Biden, someone say, just surge to the border and come in. When you have situations where we go through whole lines of people and we don't do a single bit of vetting. When you have situations where you can get on that CB1 program and Biden won't even ask you any questions. And finally, you can answer anything you want because your country doesn't respond. Have you ever been in prison? No. Now, how do I check with Venezuela? I call up Maduro. I say, hey, Nick, was Jose Gonzalez ever in prison? F you. Right? That's what happens. That's why we have so many. Have you noticed about half the time when you see one of these murderers, robbers, thieves, perverts, child molesters, it's a Venezuelan. Because that guy emptied out his prisons on Biden. So the Dade mayor, who, in case he ever runs for anything else, you can remember, is Daniela Levine Cava. She wants to examine it for environmental concerns. Well, by the way, Danielle, that's a federal law too. We don't need you to examine. Maybe what we should do is examine what kind of job are you doing running Dade County? I don't know anything about you, Levine Cava. I never heard about you until now. This is not a nice way to hear about you. You want to exceed constitutional bounds and don't seem to show any respect for the distinction and the checks and balances between the state and local government. Well, the one thing I can say about you, Levine Cava, is you can't possibly be as bad as the guy running for mayor in New York. Nobody could be as bad as Zoran Mumdi. Zoran Mondani. Ah, yes. Zoran is like I used to call the mayor of Denver, who gave up the police station to the Black Lives Matter and helped to begin the entire riotous 2020 summer where cops got killed, people got killed, billions of dollars in property destroyed, and every single one of the creeps got away with it because of Harris and Biden and George Soros. Well, every day something comes out about this guy that makes you wonder how, if you're listening to this show and you voted for him, I recommend that you write down that you listen to this show for the next 2 years. It will help you develop an intellect so you'll be able to safely cross the street. Because if you voted for him, I would doubt that you can take care of yourself. First of all, did you bother to look? I mean, does it make any difference that somebody should have a little bit of experience to do the job? He has none. He did one thing in his life before becoming a useless politician in a useless state assembly that is the laugh of the country. And he's only been there for a few years, and he hasn't done anything but criticize the United States. That is not the job of a state legislator, but that's what he did. Before that, he was a failed rapper. How you can fail as a rapper when all you do is yell, scream, and screech, and if you got a hoarse voice, it doesn't matter. And if you can't hit a note, that's even better. And if you don't know music, it's probably better. I mean, it isn't music. If you consider the use of the N word and the F word every third time poetry, there's something sick about you. And he failed at it. I guess you have to kill somebody to succeed, right? Don't you have to kill somebody to be a rapper? I heard that. That's not true, right?
They get street cred for it.
But that's not true of all rappers. There are some rappers that don't kill people, right? And none of them can sing, but
Good,
I mean,
clean rap, like, like Will Smith or something. But now even he got violent at the Oscars.
what?
Will Smith, good, clean rap. There's occasionally that you get some good, clean rap.
You get clean rap.
Yeah.
Do you understand it? So you know it's clean rap?
You
mean,
know,
do you
it depends
understand
on
the
your
words?
ability, I suppose.
I mean, do the
There's
lyrics,
Christian rap. There's Christian rap in the evangelical community, especially in the South.
Yeah, well, that's what the whole thing in the Catholic Church is about. The people that want to go back to the Latin Mass, they got all turned off with the guitar.
You're equating the Christian rap to like the Lutheran, casual service.
No, the Catholic Church has that too now. That's what that big battle over the Latin Mass is
But
about.
it's still not a
I mean,
contemporary.
we can either do Mozart's Requiem Mass,
You're not going to find a
which
Catholic
is one of the
church.
greatest pieces of music ever written by a human being, or we can do Humpty Dumpty's guitar and xylophone to I don't know, street music.
Hey, come to some of these Protestant churches, and man, I don't even know
Really?
if your head would explode. There's all kinds of sound, electronic music, and interesting things. It's actually funny at Liberty University. They'll like party.
I don't know how the angels could have changed so quickly and been able to listen to that. They used to sing Gregorian chant and stuff like that. And now they're listening to, hey, N-word, I'm going to F you tomorrow.
Good censorship there.
That's an actual song, the one I just did.
Oh, it gets worse than that.
So here are a couple of the things that, as a youngster, Mondami did. When he ran this organization at the college that let him in because he was not qualified for Columbia, even though he cheated to try to get in and said he was black. You know, I wonder, do they give you like a personal interview when you go to Columbia? Or because I wonder how he got away. How he got away with being black walking in. I don't know. I look at his application and it says black African American, and this guy walks in and I don't see a black guy.
Well, yeah, we just did.
Am I afraid to say anything because his father is a professor and a president there? and you know, he must have. And the reason he did it is, of course, these people all have motives, and the press never ever tells you the motive. His motive is that his SAT scores were medium low for affirmative action students, which means he had failed out of the regular student category. And he was down on the low, which also means he would have taken a spot from an affirmative action student that was near the top, who probably comes from a poor family and is the theory of that unconstitutional legislation, if it has a decent theory. It's to help people overcome the damage done by slavery and persecution and racism. Well, he came to the country 5 years ago. If he was persecuted, he wasn't persecuted here. He never subjected to slavery. He's not even an African American under the meaning of that exception made to our discrimination laws. It was made for people who have endured the lasting effects of slavery. Well, he hasn't endured that, and he's not going to endure it because, except for that stupid application, nobody's ever going to see him as an African American. And I don't think he ever told anybody else he was an African American, certainly not a black. And it is not just a mistake. It's a mistake for pecuniary reasons or for ambition, so he could get into Columbia instead of make-believe Columbia, where he went to, and organized a group of radical supporters of Islamic extremists and invited them to speak on campus. People who, for example, attributed the 9/11 attack to America. America caused it. What the hell is New York electing somebody like this for? You might be ashamed of yourself, not looking into somebody's background and electing somebody like this. The guy hates this country. He allies himself with groups that want to overthrow this country. It is not a joke. If you think it's a joke, then go talk to all the people and their families who've been killed by them. And he allies themselves with him. And he can't be that stupid. I know he didn't do well on his SAT exams, and I know he's a basically dishonest person. But what else do you need to know about him? Never had an honest job in his life. Never has done a damn thing. Spouts off about the worst radical ideas. And then he says things that even for a communist are stupid. It's only stupid communists that are in favor of price controls. Communists have given up on the reality of price controls because they realize it doesn't create a dynamic enough market to create, for example, new products. Xi Jinping right now is trying to revive the economy of China, and he's failing miserably. He's trying to do something we do, what we did. He's trying to do a stimulus. But he's stimulating a demand economy, a control economy, which means you're just throwing good money after bad. So stimulus in our country will create inflation, but it will create more economic activity. There, it doesn't do anything except create tremendous debt where they're not going to have the prospect of growing out of it, which we do. One of the things that's missed by the anti-Trump people is when you lower taxes, right? First thing they do is deduct from the budget all the money you collected from the tax when it was at the higher rate, which means they do no calculation of the dynamic effect the tax reduction can have on the economy, despite the fact that we have 3 live examples of how that works. Under Kennedy in the 60s and 70s, under Reagan in the 80s, and under Trump 5-6 years ago. In every case, the economy didn't go up. And I did it in New York, and I can show you all the numbers. I can show you with a simple little tax how by cutting the tax rate in half, I collected 3 times more revenue. When I say that to liberals, some of them go into a coma because it's so contrary to anything their dumb minds can think. It explodes their brains. How could that be? If the tax is 10% and you move it down to 5%, you're going to collect half the amount of money. Did you ever consider this, half brain? If at 5%, 3 times more people go to work and pay the 5% tax than we're paying the 10% tax, I make more money. Or think about televisions, right? They used to cost $8,000. Now they cost $1,000, and they make more money at $1,000. Why? Because 50 times more people are buying them. The art of taxation, if you want to tax, is to figure out the golden number. The number that produces the most revenue. And it is not the highest percentage. It never is. And when you have a free country, particularly at the state and local level, meaning you can move, it's a disaster. Because it becomes a vicious circle, right? So I want to set up apartment stores and department stores and grocery shops and supermarkets for poor people or for anybody. The government's going to pay for food from now on. I want to do that. In order to do that, I have to raise taxes. Well, he says he's going to do that by raising taxes on the rich. He threw out a number like 10 billion. I don't even know if that'll pay for it. He's going to hit the rich. Well, the rich are right now probably paying, it depends on how you define rich. They could be paying 95% of the taxes. The group that he's talking about. They're certainly paying 90%. And the very rich are paying 98%. Now, if you tax them more and they leave, then you're not collecting the taxes that you need to pay for the grocery store and the restaurant and the free transportation. So what do? You raise taxes more. And what happens? More leave. And then you do it some more and more leave. And what happens then? You no longer have a city. Or you no longer have a city that's anything but made up of Trendy MS-13, and our local Cuomo, Bragg produced criminals. One of the ex-interns of Mandami, Hadika Arzu Malik, on February 28th, while working with him, was handing out posters, "Make a record of the badges of the pigs." And then she was yelling out, "To the pigs, to the pigs, to the pigs who can call themselves by the name of Islam, to put some respect on their names." She seems to be uncomfortable with the police, which may be why he's going to, he's not just going to defund the police. He's going to do away with them, and he's going to set up the Department of Social Safety. He will use trained social workers in the place of trained law enforcement agents. So when Tren Diragua is torturing somebody for money, like cutting some part of their body off, the social worker will show up and say, "Please stop that and use your words." How do you think that'll work? Or walk into a tavern when a shootout is going on and saying, "Boys, put down your gun." So the real question is he as stupid as his SAT scores indicate? Or as stupid as the elite in this city can produce? And they can get pretty stupid people. Or is he just an out-and-out trained communist? He is a communist, and he is stupid. But which is the prevailing thing? Which is the prevailing thing here? I don't know. We'll see as the election goes along. Unfortunately, I didn't go into great detail on this, but there's been more action in the investigation of Mayor Adams, and a whole I don't know if it's a book or a paper that's been put out on how his police department was corrupt. Now, whether they have him participating in that or not, I don't know. And whether it's true or not, I don't know. But that investigation, that the president pardoned him from a federal charge, but you always have Bragg sitting there. And I don't know, a guy like Mandami, it'll look awful good to him. Mandami also says he's not going to let the prime minister of Israel in New York.
Well,
now, I mean,
that
sounds like a child, doesn't it?
It does, Mayor. And I love BB's response.
What was his response?
His response is well, the president stepped in first and said, I'll get you out, basically. Yeah. and BB just I was curious, how would you respond to something like this? Because this guy very likely could be the next mayor. And BB just didn't take it. He just said, he laughed it off. He brushed it off, which I think is really the only way to take something like that, right? Because he doesn't want to wade into domestic affairs. Or I just thought I appreciated his answer. And it just goes to show again what a strong, capable leader Israel has right now. And boy, do they need one.
If he went to New York, he would go with Trump.
Right. And then we mentioned, well, maybe the president's got his own issues. We might want to go with somebody else.
Well, I don't know. Trump at least has the guts to handle it, right?
Right, exactly. They should take you with him.
The president hasn't really decided what he's going to do with him, but he has said that he's going to do something if he gets elected. New York City will run properly. I'm going to bring New York back. I love New York, and he said I'm going to do it in spite of him.
Right.
He might take control of New York City.
Right.
I don't know if you can do that, but I appreciate the thought that's being given to what you can do for my formerly great city. Meanwhile, the city controller, who's supposed to be in charge of the finances of that massively rich city with a budget larger than the entire state of Florida, and a population less than half, Brad Lander, who is almost as big a communist as Mumba Dumba, and public advocate Jermaine Williams, who is, I don't know what you would call him, So they are now telling immigrants to go into hiding. And they are telling them not to show up for their hearings. In other words, they're advising them to commit federal contempt. Haven't they gone too far to? I mean,
You would
isn't
think
that-
so.
I mean, isn't it-
And I think that
This is crazy. A public official is saying, if you have an order to appear in a federal court, because in his view, the federal courts are are engaging in abduction. Now, these are people that come into the United States illegally. Now, let's assume these are the so-called sympathetic ones, right? They come in illegally and they work. I don't think they'd be associated with this half-wit Jermaine Williams or Brad Lander if they were sensible people. But let's assume that these are people who work. They're still here illegally, which meant they prevented somebody or created a burden for other people coming in legally. And for the good of our country long term, and the growth of our country, and the success of our country, we want the best possible people coming in, not the worst. We want the people that come in who begin at least with an essential notion that you got to follow the law.
And an appreciation and a respect for those laws.
But do you realize how much that deteriorates us? I mean, the first act in becoming an American is you disrespect our laws. And now we have to take a risk on you and make you an American. You have no right to be an American. I was lucky. I was born here. I have a right to be an American. I'm just lucky. But you don't have a right to be an American if you're not born here. And we don't have any kind of obligation to take you. And we should take you if you're going to help us. Because we can't take everybody. And we should be a meritocracy. And that doesn't mean we take just rich people. We need a lot of people who can work hard. We obviously need people for farming. And we're having a problem that we might not have enough people for farming. So,
but there's plenty of
these people are demented. I mean, to tell these, it's getting awful close to being a violation of the law. I really do think the people who block the facilities are violating at least 2 federal statutes. The politicians are. And I'd really like to see a test case and stick a couple of them behind bars. The federal government has a right to be protected, and it's carrying out its mission. They're doing a lot more to interfere than those J6 people did in interfering with Congress. A lot more. And nobody's doing anything to them. And we tortured those people.
Right. Well.
So Bibi, I think, is heading back. And we're going to have to see what happens over the weekend with the negotiations. Also, how often have I told you that the teachers union was a communist inspired and built union? I mean, the Communist Party of the 1930s. It's a communist union.
You've been dealing with them for decades.
Oh, without any doubt. And it follows books by Gramsci and several other Marxists about how to take control of education, particularly American public education, so you can accomplish the great goal of Marx and Engels, which is to make children the property of the state. Our public schools, where the teachers' unions have control, are directly dedicated to that purpose. And they're dedicated to the purpose to make them anti-American. American history is gone. We don't teach it any longer. You just go look at what the kids are being taught. They're not being taught about the great George Washington. They're being taught about the slave owner, about the America as an oppressor. It always has to find someone to oppress. That's what they're being taught. That's the curriculum of the NEA and the 2 major teachers' unions. I mean, I've known this since I was a kid. My parents were very, very strongly opposed to communism. I had an uncle who helped develop the Sanitation Workers Union. The Communist Party was all over the union movement. It's the reason why we have an AFL and CIO, or had an AFL and CIO. One of them broke away because it threw the other out because it didn't want to be affected by communists. So you have very strongly anti-communist unions, usually the blue collar, and very strongly communist unions, more or less the more white collar unions. So and the government unions, heavily communist. So who does the NEA support for mayor? Who does the teachers union here support for mayor? Mandami. The teachers of the United States support the guy that will not let Netanyahu into New York. They support the guy who protests for Hamas, a registered terrorist homicidal organization. And there are many Jewish teachers in New York, and they support a guy who is, oh gosh, the word anti-Semitic is too mild. The guy is consumed with hatred for the Jewish people. He spits it out. He'll take what was always regarded in a I think a quite beautiful way as a Jewish city, and then at other times on St. Patrick's Day, an Irish city. But you can take a few ethnic groups in every city, and they had a big influence on it. Well, the Jewish people had a big influence on New York. And I used to have great fun with the two mayors in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, telling them I had a bigger Jewish city than they did, and they would have to listen to me. That's not true anymore. Jewish people left, and they're going to leave like hell. Well, can you imagine having a guy? Well, this is not universally true. But you want to rule of thumb to save the Jewish people? Muslims hate you. They're taught to hate you. There are exceptions. And there are important exceptions. But don't go in assuming the exception. If you do, who knows what can happen? The idea that the Jewish people should be eliminated, that Hitler had, was supported by the Grand Mufti of Palestine. He was a close friend of Hitler's. 80 to 85% of the Palestinian people, not Hamas, support the destruction of the state of Israel. What percentage of the Arab people do you think support the destruction of the state of Israel? Arabs in general. I'm going to make a guess, 70, maybe 80. And the Quran is unrelenting. Unrelenting. So you have to be a Muslim who reads it out of the Quran. You really have to be a Muslim who's willing to say, and I know some who are, including some imams who are. You have to be willing to say that at some point in his life, Muhammad went mad because of rejection. And if you were to divide Muhammad that way, you would have the good Muhammad and the bad Muhammad. And the good Muhammad quite legitimately and maybe naively thought that he could sell his revelation to the Arabs, the Christians, and the Jews. Instead, when he began, he was uniformly rejected by all of them because it didn't make sense to them. And also, he was afflicted by epilepsy. So it wasn't particularly effective to have an epileptic fit in the middle of what seemed to be a rather fanciful tale about being taken to heaven. Now, they didn't know about epilepsy, the Arabs, the Jews, or the Christians, and they quickly attributed it to devil possession. So this jammed him up tremendously, and he got thrown out of Medina. And he went out into the desert, and he found the uneducated, illiterate, desperate Arabs, mostly Bedouins, no education, no basis to really analyze or rationally examine, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker, and became his. And he decided he wasn't going to persuade anybody, so he developed an army, and he became a very effective general. And he spread the religion by conquering. Iran was Persia. Persia was Zoroastrian. Persia resisted the Muslim religion for a century of being conquered by the Arabs and converted. Convert or die. He would give the Christians and the Jews convert, die, or pay. But I think his own people was just convert, I think. Or everybody may have had a pay option, I don't know. So that is what we're facing. And if we don't realize it, we're going to make terrible mistakes, and we're going to be silly, and we're going to be taken advantage of, as we have been for a very, very long time. And the decisions we make going forward should be made that way. We have got to defeat Mandami. We have got to change the regime in Iran. If we do that, we take a big step in reversing their gains. Well, tonight, you can once again get Dr. Maria on what network? I always like you to.
Lindell TV.
On Lindell TV right now. Boom.
Head on over.
She is going. Oh, there's a lot to go.
And if you have your laptop and your phone, you can put it on both. Help us with.
Just go right
get
on.
us 2 ratings.
We had it on 3 different.
We had it on like 6
places the other night, and she was fabulous. And then you come back to us tomorrow at 7 on Lindell TV, and here at 8, and we'll see what kind of progress has been made, because there are a whole bunch of things going forward right now that'll kind of shape the next couple of years. The trade agreements, the 2 major peace negotiations, and the let's call it the working in of the Big Beautiful Bill Act.
What a great name.
Big Beautiful Bill Act.
What a great name. If you can't win re-election with that name, you got bigger problems.
And we'll have some further thoughts for you on how you can win the New York race. Oh, how could I forget to mention, unless I did, that Jim Comey and James Cardinal Comey, I'm sorry, Jim. James Cardinal Comey and Brennan, who was a despicable creature, are under investigation by the FBI for the perjury they obviously committed.
I have a question with this. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer mayor, but when you are announcing this sort of investigation so publicly, I start to question the investigation, right? Aren't true investigations, they're done, then you announce the results? Or
I mean, should they have said they're investigating him? No.
Or you maybe strategically leak it out, but the fact that they're saying it themselves, hopefully this investigation, the meat of it's been done, or
it says it's been opened.
See, that makes me, the fact that they're announcing it, Mayor. Am I wrong on that? You're a former investigator.
They should have gone to jail some time ago. I'm not going to go over in detail their crimes. I will if it goes any further, or I might anyway. But they're about as clear as, what's that? The nose on my face. Comey, I actually do believe, as we review history, that had Comey in particular, because his case is the more obvious one. If we had prosecuted Comey and his band of crooks in the FBI, the guys who ran the Trump investigation, or we try to figure out what this means, 8647.
When I hear Comey, that's what
that's his sick.
I bring that up.
That's his sick sense of humor. He's obviously a sick guy. Now, I hired Jim Comey. I know Jim Comey from the time he was an assistant U.S. attorney. His daughter was on my case in the U.S. attorney's office.
Oh yeah, she was.
She's also the one that just
let Diddy off the hook.
She's also the one that just prosecuted
Diddy.
Diddy to a disgraceful result.
Right. Yeah.
When I was a United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, we didn't prosecute people because they were celebrities. We prosecuted people only if they committed crimes. We didn't prosecute them because they were Republicans or Democrats, and we sure as hell didn't persecute them the way they did to me. It all started with, someday we'll go through it, but it all started with Comey and Martha Stewart. Big headline for Big Jim, James Cardinal Comey, possessor of morality and truth.
Oh, he got that Martha
Who
Stewart.
disgraced the FBI. Disgraced the FBI and his country and the Southern District of New York. Had he been prosecuted, and some of the others who screwed around with a totally phony investigation of Trump, which they paid for, I don't think you ever would have had the rest of it because they'd have been too scared. You know, the criminal law really works if you use it properly. It really deters. Punishment under the criminal law has two purposes. One is justice. The other is deterrence. Now, deterrence doesn't always work. Some crimes are not crimes of the mind, they're crimes of the emotion. Sometimes people who commit crimes aren't capable of creating thoughts. They're insane. But that doesn't mean it doesn't work at all. People are afraid of going to jail. And they do stop doing things. I'll give you a great example and then we'll close out. When I was a young assistant U.S. attorney, I learned in large measure how to be a trial lawyer by trying numerous bank robbery and drug cases. Bank robbery because it's a federal crime, investigated by the Secret Service, and therefore every other robbery would go into the DA's office, but bank robberies would come to us. And you went to jail for a long time, so nobody pled guilty. And in the federal courts, we never really plea bargained then. Yeah, you want to plea bargain? Go sit in jail for 10 years. And that's why you stopped doing these things. Well, I left being U.S. attorney. I went to Washington. I was 5 years in private law practice. I came back, and I'm U.S. attorney in charge now, and there are no bank robbery cases to train my poor little assistants, my new ones. I want to get them to be trial lawyers real quick, and I tried 20 cases in my first year. They're trying 4 and 5. So where are my bank robbery cases? Well, you know where my bank robbery cases went? The cameras took them away. They put cameras in the banks. And the bank robbers aren't dumb. They went and held up liquor stores instead. Or they went and held up pharmacies or restaurants. But they weren't going to go do it on camera, even with a mask on. Bank robberies are down. Don't tell me deterrence doesn't work. And don't tell me that people would rather be executed than stay in prison. Because then why do they spend 30 years and $50 million trying to avoid execution? Because they know that some jackass, liberal, anti-American creep is going to parole them. Like the 42 cop killers that are running around New York that were paroled because of Andrew Cuomo. 42 cop killers paroled who should have been executed. You say, well, how does it deter murder? Well, the murderer can't do it again, pal. I don't want to tell you how many multiple murderers I prosecuted. Whose life is more important? The shithead that killed someone or the potential future victim? That's the world we really live in, not the make-believe silly world of the American left-wing idiot. So, with that helpful thought and a prayer for all of these people that are undergoing natural disasters, I do think whether you find things lacking and therefore that can be improved, that when you get past that original part, the rescue effort has been magnificent in both places. Tremendous cooperation on all levels, tremendous amount of private involvement, a great deal of concern, and a great deal of love for the people of Texas and New Mexico and our fellow Americans. So anything you can do for them, and I tell you, there are plenty of, I'm not going to recommend where to send money. There are a lot of good places, and there are a couple of creepy places. I know one that's safe, and that's Samaritan's Purse, because it's run by Franklin Graham, and he's a fabulously religious and holy man who just cares. His father brought him up the right way, and they do great work. But the others do too. I just happen to know that one. Like if we're talking about taking care of veterans, and you go to T2T.org, Tunnel to Towers. They're probably helping out. An $11 sign up with them, it'd be great to take care of our homeless veterans. Some of them must have been affected by this. And I'm sure they could lend an awful lot of expertise to this because they sure know how to build houses. I'm talking about Tunnel to Towers. So Ted, anything else that we need to cover?
Another busy news day. I mean, we could keep going. We had people saying how, wow, you're signing off early
get him
tonight.
To Dr. Maria. We're going over our goal here a little. We don't want to do that. So we're going to ask you to pray for all those people that are undergoing this trauma now and this challenge. Pray for the president to give him the guidance to just work us through all of it. I mean, we've gone over maybe a third of the things that he's got to work his way through today, and certainly over the next week or two. And then pray for the people that are in harm's way, like in Ukraine, like in Israel, like in Iran. And just say thank you to God for giving us America. Always good to spend a little time talking to him in your way. That's prayer. God bless America. U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news,
Wow.
even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax,
Wow.
channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly,
Wow.
where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast. These deals are selling out.
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this
pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep green, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because we like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are